Syndicate is a sci-fi first-person shooter, developed by Starbreeze Studios and published by Electronic Arts. Released 2012. You are Miles Kilo, a Syndicate agent sent to protect Eurocorp's interests. But everything changes when some boring character does something bland and causes a corporate war.
Just get to the fucking guns already!
Syndicate features excessive amounts of blood, violence, and dismemberment that managed to get it banned in Australia, which, to be fair, isn't exactly difficult. It's totally over the top, with the ability to pop heads and even literally cut enemies in half with certain weapons. The minigun is especially good at eviscerating waves of brainlets. In fact, Syndicate probably has one of the best video game miniguns of all time. At the risk of sounding like a psychopath, I do have to say, the sheer amount of gore makes kills incredibly satisfying. This combined with fairly decent ragdoll effects make for a fun experience, especially since enemies love to fall over railings when you kill them near a ledge. But everything isn't quite perfect. Even though killing an enemy has a decent bit of impact, every bullet before the kill lacks feedback. A lot of enemies barely even react to taking bullets. Shooting a guy with an assault rifle tends to feel less like killing and more like tickling. Weapons like the Mark IV SMG are even worse in this respect, and the overall tankiness of most enemies doesn't help. Even with grunts, you can find yourself shooting them multiple times in the head to finally get a kill. It just never feels quite right. But bullet impacts in the environment are usually pretty nice. Shooting a metal surface will leave sparks and particle effects, along with fairly realistic bullet holes. Some will even glow with heat. Shooting concrete doesn't have any fancy particles, but it does leave a little plume of smoke coming out of the bullet hole. Overall, some nice details that make shooting feel like actually shooting. But despite the nice impact decals, blood decals might as well be non-existent. They don't look bad, there just isn't that much. If I'm able to shoot an enemy's head off, the surrounding area should reflect that. But it's only the decals. Blood spray particle effects are still really good. And finally, Syndicate has this weird blue overlay that highlights your enemy every single time you get a kill. It doesn't add anything to the game, and honestly just detracts from the whole experience. It's as if the game doesn't trust the player. It feels like it should tell you every time you get a kill. I mean, come on. Seriously? Overall, impact in Syndicate's gunplay is pretty good, but it does have some issues holding it back from perfection. The guns in Syndicate punch hard. They clearly went for more stylized and action movie effect rather than a realistic one, but it works well with the context of the game. Automatic weapons are as satisfying as ever. And weapons like the Kusanagi rifle can swap from a close-range, fully automatic shooter to a long-range DMR, and the sound effects reflect that. Most of the weapons actually sound pretty great, but somehow Starbreeze managed to screw up the shotgun. I mean, come on, if your game has a shotgun, it should sound the most powerful out of all the weapons, not the weakest. So all in all, sound quality in Syndicate's not bad. It honestly doesn't excel that much, but it's still above average. If only the damn shotgun sounded good. I established in the first episode that weight is the most difficult thing to judge in terms of gunplay, but it's not quite as difficult to judge for Syndicate, because you can easily tell right off the bat that it's got some issues. Aside from pulling the trigger, guns don't react very well to player input. Weapon movement while you're aiming around is practically non-existent, and while walking it feels really unnatural. That and aiming down sights is incredibly fast. It almost instantly snaps to being aimed, which you'd only be able to do if your weapon was made out of paper mache. It's already hard enough to feel like I'm controlling a human being with Miles Kilo's GoPro vision. Uncomfortable weapon handling doesn't help. Weapons feel too light when performing certain actions, but at the same time they feel heavier when actually firing, or sprinting around with a sluggish, clunky movement and obnoxious weapon models that take up a quarter of your screen. Basically, the main issue with gun weight in this game is the lack of consistency. It seems as if there wasn't a clear goal as to what exactly the guns were supposed to feel like. Sometimes they're heavy, sometimes they're light. If weapon handling was smoothed out a bit more, Syndicate could have been a lot better. Weapon recoil feels great. Every gun kicks just about as much as you'd want, but not so much that it's disorienting. Well, aside from maybe the AP3 pistol. But it all feels super stylized, just like the rest of the game. The only downside is that despite feeling alright, the recoil has no variation or randomness. Just kicks straight back towards your eyes. It's not that big of a deal right now, but I'll explain why this is such an issue in the accuracy segment. And there's also some other nice animations, like being able to fire your weapon over cover, even if it is very rarely used. Switching between different weapon sights, or shooting while sliding, is also super cool, even if it is clunky as hell. Syndicate also has some really fun special weapons, like the Gauss Gun that can lock onto enemies and shoot around corners. It's actually animated really well in the way that projectiles track enemies. And not only does Syndicate have one of my favorite video game miniguns, it's also got one of my favorite flamethrowers. It's kind of horrifying, actually. It manages to convey a genuine feeling of power, unlike flamethrowers from many other games. This is pretty much entirely due to the nicely animated fire effects. And I'm pretty sure muzzle flashes look good, but who the hell could tell with all the goddamn bloom? But the biggest issue by far are the reload animations. Seriously, they do not match the quality of the rest of the game. We have seen much smaller games with much smaller budgets achieve significantly better animations. And it's not a matter of realism, just quality. The reload animations feel cheap and unnatural. They also seem to vary in style as well. Reload animations for the Kusanagi or the App 3 still manage to appear pretty smooth, but other weapons like the TAR-39 or the Mark IV feel more stiff. I don't really know what went on behind the scenes during development of this game, but something must have happened in the animation department to let these through. And since they are so commonly used throughout the game, well, the cons outweigh the pros. And one more minor detail I wanted to mention was the fact that every time you swap weapons, you recock whatever gun you're taking out. This is incredibly annoying and makes absolutely no sense at all. It just breaks up the flow of the fast-paced combat for no reason whatsoever. Even though Syndicate's animations do a lot of things really well, there's just no looking past the bad reload animations and the annoying weapon swapping. Accuracy is the most incredibly aggravating part of Syndicate. I'll just get straight to the point. The bullets do not feel as if they're actually coming out of the barrel of your guns. It feels more like they're randomly spawning and flying in whatever direction to add bullet deviation. Remember the recoil animations that I mentioned earlier? Well, those have nothing to do with where the bullets land. Your crosshair or sight is always right in the center of your screen, while the bullets, at least on automatic weapons, can land wherever they damn well please. And even then, the randomness isn't even really random. If we look closely, we'll see there's only a few different bullet trajectories for each shot to choose from. You'll see some shots repeatedly hitting the same location off-center. This feels like a big fuck you after playing Metro Last Light for the last episode, which handled this mechanic perfectly. Now, Syndicate isn't exactly a big open-world game. It's an extremely linear corridor shooter, where engagement distance rarely exceeds 20 meters or so. So honestly, if you're just playing the game to enjoy it, you probably won't even notice this issue. But that one little detail of your weapon's movement correlating with bullet trajectories is, at least to me, what makes it or breaks it. Now, it's not just that I want to see more realism in shooters. That would just make a game like Syndicate boring. But I do want video game guns to provide better and more satisfying feedback to the player. After all, it's the small details that make a great game. Okay, so I ripped on Syndicate pretty hard, but despite all this, I still kinda love this game. It's not necessarily the gunplay, but what complements the gunplay. After purchasing a skill that regenerates 50% of your health per melee takedown, I realized Syndicate had become a very different game. My gun became less of a weapon and more of a tool to keep enemies at bay while I rush in for melee takedowns, which are pretty damn brutal. Well, most of them are anyways. Combining this with a clunky-ass movement system that for some reason actually gets really fun. What you're left with is a Hotline Miami-paced, absurdly stupid action game. It's one hell of a time if you're willing to look past the bullshit. Oh, and did I mention it has co-op?
Yeah, check it out. I'm fucking blinged. I'm clouded up, bro. I'm clouded up. I'm clouded.
Where did you get that?
Clouded. Oh, there's friendly fire. In 2077, my city was voted the worst.
Good, bro.